moving on to Eclipse. I did do a video on Twilight and New Moon, so if you haven't seen those, go check those out. I actually had to ask my sister what even happens in this book, like what the big idea is, because I truly don't remember. I feel like with all of the plots, this one was the most forgettable. At least to me. This one is the start of the love triangle between Bella, Jacob, and Edward. So there's gonna be some drama. Let's just get right into it because I'm at chapter 9, so let's just get right into it. Let's talk about this. At the end of New Moon, Bella comes back from Italy from saving Edward, and her dad is pissed and he grounds her, and then Jacob shows up and he tells Charlie about her riding motorcycles. That just makes him more pissed with more grounding. Yeah. And Edward proposed, and I'm confused on if they're engaged or if they're not engaged. It was very open-ended. I'm not really sure. There's no ring, so I'm not really sure. In the beginning of this one, though, she does say that Edward likes to call her his fiancé, and she's like, ugh. So I guess they are engaged. Right in the beginning of the book, Bella gets off grounding. Charlie's like, you know what, you've been a good child, so I'm gonna take you off grounding on the condition that you actually hang out with your friends. And she's like, Charlie, I've been grounded. I haven't been able to hang out with anybody because you won't let me out of this house. Which is a good point. Good on you, Bella. Bella hasn't talked to Jacob since he ratted her out about the motorcycles. And she, not to say that she hasn't been trying, because she's been trying to contact him, but he doesn't answer her phone calls. She's talking to Edward about it, and Edward is very adamant that she is not allowed to see Jacob. He tells her that werewolves are unstable. Sometimes he says werewolves are unstable. Sometimes the people near them get hurt. Sometimes they get killed. He's a hypocrite. He is just as, probably even more dangerous than the werewolves are for her. Shut up. There's a point where at school where Alice has a vision, and Bella later on asks Edward, what did Alice see? And he's like, oh, she's just worried about Jasper. And all day Bella was like, he's keeping something from me because he keeps trying to distract me, and he keeps making it impossible for me to be alone with him so that I don't ask him about what she saw. And then when he says that, she's like, oh, I mean, I guess that makes sense. And she says, my imagination was sadly out of control. I'd taken a perfectly normal afternoon and twisted it until it looked like Edward was going out of his way to keep things from me. I needed therapy. That, my dear, is called gaslighting. After the vision, Edward brings up the fact that his parents had bought Bella the plane tickets to go see her mom in Florida. And Bella's like, he's like, let's go, you should go this weekend. And she was like, I mean, that's such short notice. I mean, I would love to see my mom, but I kind of, I have things going on, and I just got off grounding with Charlie, and I don't want to have to argue with him about it, because he's not going to be happy about that. And it's just not, right now it's not worth the effort. I'll put the effort in later. Just right now, no. And then Charlie gets home, and Edward's like, hey Charlie, Bella has plane tickets to go see her mom. And he's like, oh, okay, tickets? And Edward's like, yeah, one for her, one for me. And he's like, absolutely not, that's not happening. You're not going to Florida with Edward. No. And then Bella's like, fine, I'll just move out. And it turns into a fight. She fights with Charlie, and then when she gets alone with Edward, she was like, what the hell was that? Why did you do that? And he says, clearly you were too much of a coward to deal with Charlie, so I interceded on your behalf. Bella says, interceded, you threw me to the sharks. Are we not going to talk about the fact that he just called you a coward? Edward. Bella comes up with the idea that she's just going to go see Jacob. So she goes out to go see him, and her truck won't start. And then Edward's suddenly there in the passenger seat, and she doesn't say anything to him, and he just says, Alice lost you, like, in her vision. She couldn't see you anymore, so I figured I knew what you were doing. I'll put your car back together before school tomorrow if you want to drive yourself, and you can close and lock your window if you want. And Bella just storms off. Edward is literally acting like her father. He's practically grounded her himself. You cannot be so controlling. She's allowed to see her friend. Edward and Bella go to Florida to see her mom. They have a very nice trip. Renee is very observant, and she's like, you guys are like magnets. Like, he moves, you move. It's kind of weird. And Bella's like, yeah, you know. But when they get back, Charlie is telling Bella, you should go call Jacob because he's been calling nonstop. And the phone rings in the middle of him saying that, and she goes and answers it, and it's Jacob. And he's like, oh, hey, you're back. And she's like, yeah, what's up? And he's like, oh, nothing. And then he's like, you're going to school tomorrow, right? She's like, yeah. And then he hangs up. She's like, and then she starts spiraling about that conversation. She's like, why would Jacob call me just to ask me if I'm going to school tomorrow? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then she's like, oh, he was checking to make sure I was still human. When Bella and Edward get to school the next morning, Jacob is there. And Edward's like, okay, I get it, you can leave. And Bella's like, what's going on? And Jacob's like, oh, she doesn't know anything, does she? You don't tell her anything, do you? And Edward's like, just leave, Jacob, it's not important. And Jacob's like, oh, really? And they're like talking very vaguely about what's happening, and then Bella is like, she says, all the details suddenly fell into place for me with a burst of intuition. Something Edward didn't want me to know, something that Jacob wouldn't have kept from me. Something that had the Cullens and the wolves both in the woods, moving in hazardous proximity to each other. Something that would cause Edward to insist that I fly across the country. Something that Alice had seen in a vision last week, a vision Edward had lied to me about. Something I'd been waiting for anyway, something I knew would happen again, as much as I might wish it never would. It was never going to end, was it? Bella's having a smart moment. Okay, Bella. Edward and Jacob, like, get into each other's faces, and they're, like, literally about to start fighting right there in the school grounds, and then the principal walks up, and he's like, okay, disperse. You hooligan with the motorcycle, get out of here. Why are you even here? Bella gets Edward to tell her what happened, and it's like this whole thing with Victoria being around, and Emmett crossed the line, the treaty line with the wolves and the vampires, and Paula got a little pissed off about it, and there was almost a fight between them, but like, everything's fine. Victoria did get away though. Edward obviously has to go hunting, so he leaves her a note that says, I'll be back so soon you won't have time to miss me. Look after my heart, I've left it with you. Shut up. One day Bella goes to work. I don't think I've ever mentioned this, but she works at Mike's parents' business. It's like a hiking store. She goes to go to work, and Mike's mom is like, oh, like, we don't anticipate a lot of business today, so I was going to call you and tell you that you didn't even need to come in. And Bella's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll leave. And then his mom's like, will you take these flyers with you and just, like, throw them in the dumpster, because we don't need them. And the flyers say, save the Olympic wolf. For some reason, this, like, freaks Bella out, and she's like, I have to go see Jacob right now. So she just leaves work, immediately goes to see Jacob, and it's so cute. The little reunion that Jacob and Bella have at this moment, they're both so excited to see each other. They're literally jumping up and down. They're so excited. And Jacob is like, how'd you get here? It's like, it's such a cute little reunion. Jacob starts talking about, there's an eagle, and it goes down and it gets a fish out of the water, and Jacob's like, look at that. And he said, nature taking its course, hunter and prey, the endless cycle of life and death. And yet you don't see the fish trying to plant a kiss on the eagle. You never see that. And honestly, I feel like Jacob brings up a really good point here, because vampires kill humans. Like, that's the whole thing. They need blood. Werewolves don't kill humans. Technically, they're there to protect humans of their tribe, but still. And it makes me think about the fact that Edward's so pissed off about Bella going to see Jacob because he's so dangerous, but like, you're a vampire. And then Jacob's like trying to understand why Bella is choosing Edward, and he's like, is it the looks? Is it the money? And Bella's like, don't be stupid. And she like gets mad and tries to walk away, and he catches her, and he's like, don't get mad. Like, I seriously am trying to understand. I just don't, I can't comprehend. I can't comprehend it. And then Bella tells him, because he'd still be the most loving and unselfish and brilliant and decent person I've ever met. What about Jacob? Then they start talking about imprinting. And this is a fun conversation. So, Jacob is telling the story about how Sam imprinted on Emily. And he's trying to explain imprinting to her, and it's like hard to explain, so it doesn't really get much explained. Bella's like, oh, is it like love at first sight? And he's like, I guess. And then Jacob mentions that they don't age. As long as they transform or change into a werewolf, they don't age. And Bella freaks out. She was like, you don't age? She's like, why does everybody around me not age, but I do? I have to keep growing old. And Jacob's like, chill. They had a very nice visit together, and then Bella has to go home to a very, very angry Edward. He's pissed. And Bella's like, why did you come back? Now you have to leave again. And he was like, I don't know if you're safe. I didn't know if you were safe. And Bella's like, I'm with Jacob. Of course I'm safe. Like, he's not gonna hurt me. And he's like, you're risking your life? And it's like, no, she's risking her life being around you. Like, what are you talking about? And I think it's funny that Edward is acting like this when she was around Jacob when he first changed into a werewolf. I almost said vampire. When he first changed into a werewolf. And I feel like when they first change would be the most dangerous time. And Jacob even knew that, and that's why he was trying to stay away from Bella, because he didn't want to hurt her. Like, Edward is just... Bella has some girl time with Angela, and Angela, she's kind of like talking to Angela about this whole situation, omitting a lot of the facts. And Angela's like, sounds to me like Edward's jealous. And I'm like, sounds to me like Edward's jealous too, Angela. So Edward has to leave again, obviously, to go hunting, and he pays Alice off to practically kidnap Bella and keep her for a sleepover so that she doesn't go see Jacob again, because she makes plans with him because she knows that he's leaving. And so he pays Alice to kidnap her. Bella's pissed, obviously. She calls Jacob and she's like, turns out I can't come over because the way that Edward paid off Alice was that he bought her the Porsche it's like a yellow Porsche that is the same one that she had stolen when they were in Italy to like race to go save Edward. And Alice is like, I'm not supposed to drive it around Forks, but if you want, we could see how long it takes to get from here to LA. I bet I could have you back by midnight. And Bella's like, I think I'll pass. Girl, why are you passing on that? I would have been like, hell yeah, let's do it. What a fun little adventure that would have been. And Bella's rightfully pissed about this whole thing. And Bella says to Alice, Alice, don't you think this is just a little bit controlling? Just a tiny bit psychotic, maybe? Whoa, Bella, we're having a moment of clarity here. Yes, it is controlling. Edward is being very controlling and manipulative. The first night that Edward, Jesus fucking Christ. The first night that Bella is sleeping over at the Cullens' place, which, by the way, Edward got a bed so that she could sleep in an actual bed in his room. With him not there, of course. But the first night that she's there, Rosalie actually comes in and is like, hey, can I talk to you? And Bella's like, sure. And Rosalie goes into the story about how she changed, which is a intense story. Very centered around Rosalie being a very selfish person. And it basically ends with Rosalie saying that the reason why she's really upset about, one, what she is, and two, why she is so against Bella being a vampire is basically because of children. Rosalie's thing is that she never got to have children. Like, she really wanted to have kids, and she never, now she obviously can't have kids, and that was taken from her, and that upsets her so much so that she is projecting that on Bella. Like, you don't know what Bella wants. Maybe Bella doesn't even want kids. First of all. Second of all, she's already in a relationship with a vampire. If she stays with Edward, she's not going to be able to have kids anyway. So, tell me where the hate is coming from again? Because that doesn't make any sense. Because Rosalie's basically like, maybe you should think about it first. Like, there's things that you're not even thinking about yet because you're too young. Maybe you should give it some time so that you can think about those things, and like, you might change your mind in the future or something. But if Bella were to do that, if Bella were to suddenly decide that she actually does want to have a family, she would have to leave Edward. So basically, when it comes to Bella, her choice is either Edward or kids. And Bella is already like, Edward's my world, so Rosalie, you have no argument here. Just because that's what you wanted doesn't mean that's what Bella wants. Jacob ends up coming to school the next day. Jacob shows up at Bella's school, and he's like, run, Bella, let's get out of here. And he basically, like, frees her. And he takes her back to La Push, and they start talking again. And apparently between the last time that Bella had seen him and now, Quill has now imprinted. And supposedly it's really worrisome. Like, Jacob is like really worried about it. Then he goes on to explain that Quill imprinted on a 2-year-old. Bella is like, what? It's a child. And Jacob's like, it's not like that. Like, it's not like love. It's like, he explains it as like, hang on, I'm gonna read it. This is what Jacob says. There's nothing romantic about it at all. Not for Quill. Not now. It's so hard to describe. It's not like love at first sight, really. It's more like gravity moves. When you see her, suddenly it's not the earth holding you here anymore. She does. And nothing matters more than her. And you would do anything for her. Be anything for her. You become whatever she needs you to be. Whether that's a protector, or a lover, or a friend, or a brother. Bella asks Jacob if he's imprinted. And he says, never. Jacob says, you have to see her, the one that's supposedly meant for you. And Bella's like, and you think that if you haven't seen her yet, that she's not out there? Jacob, you haven't really seen much of the world, less than me, even. And Jacob says, no, I haven't. But I'll never see anyone else, Bella. I only see you, even when I close my eyes and try to see something else. Jacob! So cute! It's so cute! This makes her a little uncomfortable, and she's like, maybe I should go. And he's like, no, like, I promise I won't be weird anymore. You have the whole day, so, like, hang out with me. Like, I'll just be Jacob. Don't worry. They're hanging out in the garage, and Bella tells Jacob that she's gonna be turned, like, within a few weeks or so. And this totally triggers Jacob, and he's like, weeks? I thought we had more time than that. Again, Bella brings up the fact that Edward is 17. She says, and I get closer to 19 every day. Besides, what's the point in waiting? He's all I want. What else can I do? And Jacob says, anything. Anything else. You'd be better off dead. I'd rather you were. Hurtful. Very hurtful, Jacob. Bella dips. She's hurt. She runs out. She goes back to the Cullens' place because she's staying another night. And then she's woken up in the middle of the night by Edward being there. And they're both kind of just waiting for the other one to, like, start getting pissed off. And Edward apologizes to Bella for having Alice kidnap her. And he's like, that was wrong. I shouldn't have had her do that. That was very wrong of me. I apologize. And then Bella apologizes. Bella says, so do I have to apologize now? And Edward's like, for what? And she's like, don't you know that I went to La Push? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, you're not mad? And he's like, no, I've decided that you were right, and that his okay, hang on, I'm gonna read it. I decided that you were right. My problem before was more about my prejudice against werewolves than anything else. I'm going to try to be more reasonable and trust your judgment. If you say it's safe, then I'll believe you. Okay, Edward. Okay. Things are looking up with you. That alleviates some of the hate. They even have this moment where they start, like, making out. Because Bella wasn't sleeping in the bed. She was sleeping on the couch. And Edward had actually moved her to the bed. That's what she woke up to, was the fact that she was in a bed. And Edward's like, you don't like the bed? And then they start making out because he's trying to prove a point of why a bed is good. And it's like getting a little bit more heated than things usually get between them, because Edward doesn't ever allow it to get to that point. And Bella's like, okay, like, did you change your mind? And Edward's like, no, I'm just trying to prove to you that a bed is a good idea. And she was like, you could prove to me all night long. Edward's like, no, I told you it's too dangerous, that's not happening. Like, you teased her then. Bella goes home the next day, and one of the first things she does is she wants to do laundry because she's been gone all weekend, so she wants to, like, get her laundry done, I guess. First of all, she strips Charlie's bed, which I find very odd. I have not once in my entire life washed my parents' sheets before. That's not my job. I don't know why she's washing Charlie's sheets, but okay. She goes into her room to collect some clothes so that she can clean her clothes, and she realizes she's missing a lot of clothing. And when Edward comes to see her, he's like, oh, he's like, a vampire's been here. And immediately Bella's like, Victoria. And Edward's like, no, I don't recognize the scent. It's not a scent I know. And they end up going to Edward's house so that he can tell everybody else. And they're all trying to theorize about what it could possibly be. And they're thinking maybe it's the Volturi, because they're trying to check and see if Bella is still human or not. But they really don't think so, because they're not quite sure. It just doesn't sound right. They're thinking maybe it's a coincidence, but then again, that seems unlikely. And they're like, we're not really sure, but we're just gonna have to, like, keep an eye on it and, like, just go about our lives for now. When Bella gets back home, Charlie's like, hey, Jacob's been calling. You should talk to him. And Bella's like, yeah, I'll call him tomorrow. So she does. She calls him the next day. And Jacob's like, Bella, I'm so sorry. Like, please forgive me. It's so stupid. I didn't mean it. I was being stupid. Please forgive me. And Bella's like, I'm not mad. Like, you're forgiven. Just forget about it. And then Edward gets on the phone with Jacob, and he's like, hey, this is what's going on. Some weird vampire was in Bella's room. And Jacob's like, on it. I'm coming down right now. I love Jacob's personality in the books. He's so exuberant and like carefree. And I love Jacob in the books. He's also, he acts very much like a child because he still is a child. He's 16 years old. But when things get serious, he can take things really serious, and he can act very mature and act like an adult when he really needs to. So Jacob comes over to get this scent of this vampire so that they can keep an eye out. And he tells Bella that they're having a bonfire at La Push and that she should go. And she's like, okay, like, I'll ask. And Jacob says, is he your warden now too? You know, I saw this story on the news last week about controlling abusive teenage relationships, and then Bella cuts him off. See, I'm not the only one. Jacob sees it too. So Bella asks Edward if she can go to this bonfire, and Edward's like, you don't have to ask my permission, Bella. I'm not your father. Thank heaven for that. Perhaps you should ask Charlie, though. It's a little late for you to be saying that, Edward. You've been acting like her father since day one. For a long time, you were telling her no every time she wanted to go see Jacob. You gave her the hardest time about going to see Jacob, telling her no, acting like her father. And now that she's timid and afraid of going to see Jacob and she feels like she has to ask you, you're gonna be like, you don't have to ask me. Please, Edward, please. So Bella goes to the bonfire, and this bonfire is kind of like Jacob calls it a council meeting. So like all the wolves are there, and like the elders, and they're telling the story, basically the legends of the Quillettes. Chapter 11 is called Legends, and it's actually a really good chapter. All the legends, like the whole story that is told in this chapter is actually really incredible, and it's really fascinating. It's a very long story. I'm not gonna rehash the whole thing. I feel like it's not really too important, but there is one part of it that is important to the story, and it actually comes up later on, so I am going to talk about that, which, just to like give a little rundown of what the story is about, it's about one of the people of the tribe from a long time ago, one of the Quillettes. His name is Taha'aki. He was a spirit walker when they were spirit walkers, and Taha'aki eventually changed the magic of the tribe from being spirit walkers to being werewolves. They don't age. That's one of the things about being a werewolf, is that you don't age, which I think I talked about because Bella freaked out. But anyway, so Taha'aki doesn't age. So he has a couple wives, but then he gets married to his third wife, which they actually refer to her as the third wife. So Taha'aki's third wife is actually like his soulmate. And because of this, he decides to stop changing into a werewolf so that he can age with her and die with her. And so this third wife is important. So one of the tribes around the Quillette tribe, around in the same area, they blame the Quillettes for some of their people going missing. And the Quillettes are like, it's not us, but we'll look into it. So they do, and what they find is a vampire. Obviously at the time they don't call it a vampire, they just call it a man made of stone, and they end up killing this man because when they find him, he's actually in the process of killing two of the people that went missing from the other tribe. So they kill this man with casualties. They end up losing a lot of their tribe. This man, this stone man, had a mate who they call the Cold Woman. And the Cold Woman comes to the Quillette's land and starts killing people. And Taha'aki in order to save his tribe and his people, turns into a werewolf again after a very long time of not turning. He's an old man at this point. His son had already died, and so now he's a werewolf, and now he's fighting this cold woman. And the third wife is terrified because she had already lost her son. She knows how it went with the man the last time they fought the other vampire. So in desperation to make sure that nobody else gets hurt, she actually sacrifices herself. She stabs herself. And when she does that, her blood distracts the cold woman, and it gives Tahaki time to have an advantage over the cold one. And that is important, because that comes up later. So remember that. Alice decides that graduation's coming up. Alice decides that she's going to throw a graduation party. Bella is like, great. Another party. She's not a party person. Plus they're also still worried about, one, what's going on in Seattle with all these murders happening, and two, with now somebody coming in and stealing her clothes. She's like, there's just so much going on, why have a party? And Alice is like, there's nothing we can do right now, we might as well celebrate the good stuff. So she's gonna throw a party. The killings in Seattle are actually getting worse at this point, and Bella's like, I mean, have you guys seen this? And they're like, yeah, like, we're debating on what to do about it. Fortunately, we have Jasper, and he's kind of an expert in this, and Bella's like, what does that mean? And then we get into Jasper's backstory. There's so much backstory that happens in this book, it's insane. It's honestly exhausting. So Bella is going to go over to Jacob's because Edward has to go hunt. So she goes over to Jacob's, and Jacob's like exhausted, and he ends up falling asleep. And Bella accidentally wakes him up, and he's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. And he's like freaking out. And Bella's like, it's fine, Jacob, like, you need sleep, it's not a big deal. And he's like, I really wanted to talk to you. And she's like, I mean, you can talk to me now, what's up? And Jacob's like, I was planning to do this a little bit differently, like, I wanted to work up to it. And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, what's going on? And Jacob says, I'm in love with you, Bella. Bella, I love you, and I want you to pick me instead of him. I know you don't feel that way, but I need the truth out there so that you know your options. I wouldn't want a miscommunication to stand in our way. I feel bad for Jacob. They honestly would be so good for each other. It's so upsetting. Bella tries to explain to him that she loves him like family, but she's not in love with him. And Jacob's like, I mean, you love me. That's enough for me. Like, I'm gonna stick around. I'm not gonna give up. Like, I'm giving you have options other than turning into a vampire. And then at this moment, Jacob decides to forcefully kiss Bella. Bella is making it very obvious that she does not want him kissing her, and he is ignoring all of that. She's like beating on him. He is not even paying attention. And obviously he's much stronger than her, and he's just not giving up. And so finally Bella just stops moving. I think she describes it as just becoming stone. She just stops moving. And then Jacob finally stops kissing her. And honestly, it's a really awkward scene. It's really awkward because she so clearly doesn't want him kissing her, and he just doesn't stop. It's the note that I made for this scene was just assault. And then when he was done, she was like, are you done? And he's like, yep. And then she just punches him in the face. And she breaks her hand. And Jacob's like, oh my god, are you alright? And she's like, no, you broke my hand. And he's like, no, Bella, you broke your own hand. And he's like, let me take you home. And she's like, don't even touch me, don't even talk to me, like, I'm done. And he's like, just let me drive you home. Like, you're hurt. Let me take you home. And she's like, fine, do. I can't wait to see what Edward does to you. I hope he snaps your neck, you pushy, obnoxious, moronic dog. Dang, Bella. Jacob takes Bella home. She storms into the house and goes into the kitchen to call Edward. And Jacob follows her into the house. And Charlie's like, oh, hey, Jacob, like, I haven't seen you in a while. And he's like, hey, what's up? And Charlie's like, what's wrong with Bella? And Jacob's like, oh, she punched me in the face. And Charlie's like, okay, why? And Jacob's like, because I kissed her. And he's like, period. Okay. Charlie makes it very clear that he would rather Bella be with Jacob instead of Edward. And so Bella calls Edward. And he's like, will you please come get me? And Edward's like, yeah, like, what's up? What's wrong? Are you okay? And she's like, no, I think I broke my hand. I want Carlisle to look at it. And Edward's like, what happened? She's like, I punched Jacob. And he said, good. But why? She tells him that he kissed her. And Edward's pissed. And Charlie was like, Jacob, maybe you should leave. And Jacob's like, no, I'm gonna stay. Edward comes to get Bella, and he like comes inside and he's like, alright, let's go, like, I'll take you to Carlisle. And he says, Jacob, and Charlie's like, okay, no fighting. He's like, I'll bust out the badge if I have to. And they're like, it's not necessary. And so Jacob goes outside with Edward and Bella, and Edward's pretty much like, if you ever touch her again, I will break your jaw for her. And Jacob's like, whatever. And Jacob says, what if she wants me to kiss her? And he's like, if that happens, then obviously that's what Bella wants, and I wouldn't do anything. And then it just becomes into like a competition, pretty much. Edward's like, she's mine. And Jacob's like, we'll see about that. Then graduation comes up, and because this vampire came in and stole all of Bella's clothes, she has nothing to wear. So Alice comes by, she gives her something to wear, and in this moment Bella figures out, she's like, Alice, the killings in Seattle, like the newborns, and my clothes going missing, those are connected. Like, those are one and the same. And Alice is like, oh, you're right. Like, here we go again with Bella figuring out what's happening before the old vampires can figure it out. But they go to graduation. They go to the party. Is that coming here? Okay, so they go to graduation, and then there's the graduation party, and it sounds amazing. I want to go to a party like this. It sounds so cool. At the party, Alice ends up having a vision, and Bella sees that she has had a vision, and so she goes to try to find her, and she can't find her, she just disappeared. And Jacob shows up, and Bella's like, Jacob, I don't even know why you're here. I don't even want to talk to you. Like, leave me alone. And Jacob's like, oh, come on, don't be like that. He's like, I brought you a graduation present. And his present was a charm bracelet, and it had a charm, wooden charm of a wolf that he actually had made, which was super cute. Bella loves it, but she's also really distracted trying to find Alice. And Jacob's like, what's going on? Why are you so distracted? Like, who are you looking for? And she's like, Alice, I have to find Alice. And Alice comes to Bella, and Jacob's like, okay, what's going on? We should be in the know. So she tells them that the newborns are coming to Forks. This whole time, the Cullens have been trying to contact people to help them with the whole newborn situation, but nobody is willing to help. And Jacob was like, well, we can help with that. And Alice and Jasper are like, yes, we need help. So this is actually genius. And they're all really excited about it. And Bella's like, no, because that's more people that I love who are just putting themselves in danger. But the Cullens are all very excited about it. And the wolves get invited to a little training session that the Cullens had put together for that night, because Jasper has experience with newborns from his past and how he came to be as a vampire. The wolves are like, okay, cool, like, we'll go, we'll watch. They don't end up going in human form, they end up going in wolf form just to watch. They don't really trust the Cullens necessarily. And when they're going there, Bella is like, what if like all three of these things are connected? In other words, like, all three of what? And she's like, the newborns in Seattle, the vampire taking my clothes, and Victoria. And Edward's like, that's not a bad shout, but I'm not sure. Like, we'll keep thinking about it. That might be right, but we don't know. So they do the newborn training on how to kill a newborn vampire, because they are stronger, because they have their own blood still in their system, and they're also very erratic and very blood crazed. So they're different than fighting normal vampires. So after the training session, Jacob comes over and he's talking to Edward and Bella, and he's asking Edward what is happening with Bella, like, where's Bella gonna go? And Edward's like, not sure yet. He's like, it's something that I'm still trying to figure out. And Jacob's like, well, what about she stays at La Push? And Edward's like, no, because she goes there all the time, and I don't want her to be anywhere where, like, her scent can be followed really easily, because that's obviously what they're doing, they're following her scent. And Jacob's like, well, then why don't you hide her somewhere here, like they're in the mountains somewhere? And Edward's like, I mean, her scent is too strong, and my scent isn't going to cover it up. And Jacob says, well, what about my scent? I mean, you guys are disgusted by my scent, so what if I carried her to cover up her scent, to hide her? So they try it out. Jacob carries Bella through the forest a little bit, and then Jasper and Alice follow it to see if they can catch Bella's scent, and they're like, nope, can't catch her scent. So they come up with a plan of just hiding her in the mountains somewhere and having Jacob carry her to that spot, and leaving Seth with her, because Seth is a newer werewolf and they didn't want him a part of the fight anyway, since he's so new and so young. So they're just going to leave Seth with her so that he can communicate with the pack in case anything happens. And I'm okay. If it works to hide Bella's scent with Jacob's scent, because it's so strong to the vampires and it's nasty and they would never even find Bella's scent through it, wouldn't that mean that she would be the safest at La Push, even if she has been there a million times? Because it's not only Jacob's scent that's there, it's also these 7 other werewolves, because they all hang out at Jacob's place, from what I can tell. Not only Jacob's place, but like the whole reservation, like, it's just full of wolves. I feel like that would mean she would be the safest at La Push. But of course, if they were just to let her stay at La Push, it would ruin the whole rest of the story, so... Angel, don't fly so close to me. So after the little training session that they had, Edward is talking about how it was really fascinating to kind of like to listen in to the pack mind, because it's so different than anything he's ever heard before. And there's some werewolf drama going on. I don't even know where to begin. Leah was Sam's girlfriend like a long time ago, but then Sam imprinted on Emily, who happens to be Leah's cousin. And because he imprinted on her, obviously he's with Emily, and broke Leah's heart because they were like in love. They were in love. They were a happy, beautiful couple in love. And then he imprinted on Emily. So, in the way that like werewolves, when they're werewolves, they can hear each other's like every thought and every feeling. And so Sam has to deal with like Leah. Sam has to deal with feeling Leah's hurt every single time they're werewolves. I just can't imagine. So because Leah's obviously hurt, she's like specifically thinking of like hurtful things just to spite everyone, I guess, because she's just angry. And Belle's like, what do you mean, like, what is she thinking of? And Edward says, she's constantly bringing up things they'd rather not think of. For example, Embry. Bella's like, what's with Embry? Edward says his mother moved down from the Maka reservation 17 years ago when she was pregnant with him. She's not Quillette. Everyone assumed she'd left his father behind with the Makas, but then he joined the pack. Bella says, so? Edward says, so the prime candidates for his father are Quilletera, Senior, Joshua Yulee, or Billy Black. All of them married at that point, of course. Oh, the drama! Now Sam, Jacob, and Quill all wonder which of them has a half brother. So Bella brings up the fight, and she's like, I have to be there. Like, I have to be a part of this, because Jasper mentioned that having Bella there would probably be really helpful, because she would be a distraction for all these newborn vampires. It would give them an advantage. And obviously he's like, oh, you know, it's just a thought, like, it's not actually, you know, we won't actually do that. But since he said it out loud, Bella's like, that's a good idea. Edward, I should be there. I should help. Edward, of course, is like, no. He's like, honestly, Bella, like, you have nothing to worry about. It's gonna go fine. Everyone's gonna be fine. It's gonna go on without a hitch. Like, you know, we've got the wolves. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be so easy. Like, somebody could probably sit this out. And she was like, so you could sit it out? And he was like, well, I mean, I guess if you really want me to, I can. And she's like, yeah, I really want you to. Alice helps Bella to come up with a plan to get Bella out of the house for the weekend for the fight. Alice tells Charlie that they're gonna go shopping and they're gonna have like a slumber party for the weekend or whatever, and he's like, yeah, okay, have fun. But really, at least for this first night, Edward and Bella are staying at the house together by themselves, and the rest of the family are going out to hunt. And they're both quite excited about spending some time together alone. Bella decides that she wants to experience everything when it comes to being a human. And she's not sure really how to bring it up, but she decides that, you know, this is the night. They're spending the night together. They're spending the night together alone. Like, this is it. This is the night. So they get to the house, and then she's like, okay, like, I want to talk to you. Your condition is marriage. Can I put in a condition of my own? And he was like, okay, I mean, whatever you want, it's yours. Bella's like, well, I want you. And she really tries to seduce him as best as Bella can. She's not really the seducing type. And it turns out horribly. He really rejects her at first. He's like, no, I told you I can't do this. I will hurt you. It's not happening. Not now. Like, wait until you're less fragile. And Bella's like, no, like, this is one of the things, I don't even know how I'm gonna be as a vampire. Like, everybody keeps telling me I'm gonna be this blood-crazed newborn vampire, and what if I don't want you the same way that I want you now? I kind of want to experience this now, while I have these feelings now. And ultimately, Edward says no to having sex that night. Ultimately, Edward says, marry me first, and then I will fulfill your part of the bargain. And then he officially gets on one knee and actually proposes to her. He has a ring, which is his mother's ring. It's very simple. His proposal is very simple. He says, Isabella Swan, I promise to love you forever, every single day of forever. Will you marry me? And Bella whispers yes. She takes the ring off immediately. She doesn't keep the ring on. It's just kind of like, she doesn't want everybody knowing yet, because still the whole thing with being 18 and getting married is just really, you don't do that. So the next day is the day of the fight, and the plan is still to have Jacob carry Bella somewhere safe to cover her scent, and Edward will meet them there, and obviously he will stay there with Bella. They all meet up, and then Jacob starts carrying Bella to where they're supposed to go meet, to where Bella's going to be staying. Bella and Edward are going to be staying, and Seth. Jacob starts talking to Bella about their kiss, and he asks if Edward is a better kisser than he is. And Bella says, I really couldn't say, Jake. Edward is the only person I've ever kissed. And Jacob's like, besides me. And Bella says, but I don't count that as a kiss, Jacob. I think of it more as an assault. I put a note here that's like, that's what I said. That's what I said. That was assault. He assaulted her. So when Bella and Jacob get to the point where this is where Bella's staying, she's camping there with Edward, and they're up in a mountain, so there's a storm coming in, and it's snowing, and it's very, very cold. And they're in this tent, and obviously Edward, being cold himself, is trying to stay away, as far away from Bella as he can possibly be. And Jacob comes in, and he's like, hey, like, I can help, because he's really hot. Edward at first is like, no, that's not happening. Jacob's like, would you rather see her, like, die of frostbite or something? Like, this is kind of serious. Jacob's like, it's too cold. I can help. And so he crawls into the sleeping bag with Bella and warms her up. The next morning, this is the day of the fight now. Bella's whole thing is she's worried about everybody. She's worried that people are going to get hurt. She's worried that people are going to, like, be killed. So at this point, Edward had to go somewhere, and she's with Jacob, and he's like, alright, I'm gonna go. And Bella's like, please don't, like, please stay, please don't go. I don't want you to get hurt. And he's like, no, like, I'm gonna go. And Bella's like, please, like, I will do anything for you to stay. And Jacob's like, I mean, you could ask. And Bella's like, what do you think I'm doing? I'm asking you to stay. And he's like, no, that's not the question I'm talking about. And then she understands that he wants her to ask him to kiss her. So she does, immediately, without even thinking about it. She's just like, Jacob, kiss me. And he's like, are you sure? And she's like, Jacob, please, just kiss me. This scene is intense. After Bella asked him to kiss her, he like hesitated because he wasn't sure. But then he just went for it. And this whole scene, like, he kisses her and she's not doing, like, she's not kissing him back. And he's like, come on, Bella, like, I know you could do better than that. She gets angry, so she like tugs at his hair, but he doesn't realize that it's because she's angry. He thinks it's because she's like trying to kiss him. So he kisses her again. But this time, she's in it. She starts kissing him back. And she starts really getting into it. And then she suddenly realizes she really is actually in love with Jacob. That kiss was the most intense kiss in all of these books so far. Bella and Edward have not even kissed like that. With so much passion. There was so much passion in that was intense. After their kiss, Jacob is like, alright, bye, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go to the fight. And Bella's like, wow. But she's in the tent and she's feeling horrible. She feels horrible because she just did that. And Edward comes in. He's like, hey, what's going on? And then he asks where Jacob is, and Bella's like, he went to fight. And then Edward is silent. He's listening to the thoughts through Seth, because Seth is still there. Edward is like, oh. And he handles it really well, and he's like, he's not even mad at her, because, like, that's been his whole thing this whole time. It's like, he's just gonna let her, he wants her to be happy, at least recently. He wants her to be happy, so he's letting her choose what she wants to do, kind of thing. Edward says, I'm not mad at you, love. Jacob's more cunning than I give him credit for. I do wish you hadn't asked him, though. Edward, for some reason, when men use the term love, like, as a term of endearment, it just gets me. I'm a sucker for it. I have no idea why. Edward says, when I left you bleeding. Jacob was the one to stitch you back up again. That was bound to leave its mark on both of you. I'm not sure those kinds of stitches dissolve on their own. I can't blame either of you for something I made necessary. I may gain forgiveness, but that doesn't let me escape the consequences. And Bella's like, no, like, I want you to be mad at me. I want you to fight. I want you to fight me. And he's like, I'm not gonna fight you. Like, I'm not gonna be mad at you. It's fine. Everything's fine. And then Bella just starts, like, crawls into his lap. She throws her arms around him, and she says, I don't care that it's cold here. I don't care that I stink like a dog right now. Make me forget how awful I am. Make me forget him. Make me forget my own name. Fight back. Whoa, Bella! Edward says, careful, love. This is not happening right now. First of all, yes, it is very cold. Second of all, you do stink. Third of all, there's, like, a fight that's about to happen. Like, this isn't the best time for this. And Edward says, fourthly, we will try, Bella. I'll make good on my promise, but I'd much rather it wasn't in reaction to Jacob Black. That is a very good point. After that, everything kind of just, like, goes downhill. That's when the fight starts. The fight starts. Bella, Edward, and Seth are all, you know, safe in their hiding spot. And Edward is listening to the fight happen through Seth's mind. And he's kind of, like, narrating it to Bella to so she knows what's going on. And then all of a sudden, things get serious. And at first Bella thinks somebody got hurt, but then she realizes that no, there's just trouble coming their way. And guess who steps through the forest? Victoria. Victoria shows up with her little boy toy, Riley, and it turns into a fight between Riley, Victoria, Edward, and Seth. Seth and Riley are fighting. Victoria and Edward are fighting. And Bella, she can see, obviously, Seth and Riley fighting. She can't really see what's going on with Edward and Victoria because they're just moving so fast. And at one point, Seth gets thrown into the rock that she's like standing in front of. And he looks like he's been badly hurt. And so she pulls a third wife move and she stabs herself with a rock. She doesn't stab herself, she cuts her arm open with the rock to like try to distract them so that everybody has a chance at surviving this. It works. Seth handles Riley and Edward handles Victoria. And when Edward is done, he like turns around to Bella and he's got his hands up and he's like, "Are you okay?" She's like, I'm fine. And he's like, "You don't have to be scared of me, like I won't hurt you." And Bella's like, "Why are you saying that? I don't think you're going to." And he's like, "You just watched me like behead and dismember somebody and you're not bothered?" And she's like, no, not at all. She's bothered. She's kind of scared. But then they have to go to the clearing because the Volturi are showing up to clean up their mess. And then Jacob gets very badly hurt. One of the newborns kind of got away from the mess, and Leah saw this newborn and was trying to attack it on her own. Jacob got into the mix and ended up getting really badly hurt. Like all of the bones on the right side of his body broken. So the wolves ditch. Bella passes out because Edward, no. Bella passes out because Jacob gets hurt. And then when she wakes up, she's like in the clearing with the rest of the Cullens, and the Volturi show up, and the Cullens had spared one of the newborns because that newborn surrendered, I guess. And when the Volturi show up, which it's just Jane, Dimitri, and Felix, I believe, again. And when they show up, Jane's like, "Why is this one still alive?" And Carlisle's like, "Well, she surrendered. I saw no point in destroying her." And Jane's like, "Well, she broke the rules, so she needs to be destroyed." So, Dimitri, take care of that. So, yeah, they kill... The newborn's name was Bree, by the way. We got her name for reasons unknown. So they take care of Bree, and then they just leave. And then the next day, Bella is so worried about Jacob. She immediately goes to see him, but then she has to keep the whole pretense of like how she had this slumber party with Alice over the weekend, and they went shopping, so she has to like go back home to Charlie and like kind of make it look real. So she goes home and Charlie's like, "Oh, did you hear about Jacob?" Because Charlie was at Billy's house when Jacob was broken, and they told him that it was a motorcycle accident. So Charlie's like, "Oh, did you hear about Jacob?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna make dinner. After I make dinner, I'm gonna go see him." So she goes to see Jacob, and he's awake. He's feeling all right. He's got a lot of drugs in his system, so he's feeling okay. And they start talking about their relationship, and Bella pretty much tells him that she loves him. She really does love him, but Edward is her whole life, is her whole world, and she's not gonna change her mind. And Jacob's like, yeah, I kind of figured, but I really had to fight for it. And he's like, I did everything that I could. And he says, I think that I'm okay with us being friends. And Bella's like, how can we even be friends when we love each other like we do? And he's like, we can do it. It's possible. And it's like this really sweet moment. They have a really good conversation, and it's actually really sweet. It's a sweet and tender and touching moment between them, and it destroys Bella. I mean, I'm sure it destroys Jacob as well. Actually, no, it does. We hear that later. But it destroys Bella. She's just sobbing. And Edward's there comforting her, and she wakes up the next day and she's like, I'm so sorry that you had to be there for that. And he's like, maybe, like, if it hurts you so much, maybe you should be with him. Like, I wouldn't be upset by it. And Bella's like, no, I don't want Jacob, I want you. It's just like this whole mess that she has to sort out, and she's like, I did it to myself, and now I have to face the consequences of it, and it's fine. I'm fine. Everything's gonna be fine. Bella says, no, Edward, I've made a real mess of things, and I'm going to have to live with that, but I know what I want and what I need, and what I'm going to do now. And Edward says, what are we going to do now? And she's like, we're going to go talk to Alice. They go talk to Alice. Alice is extremely excited because Bella has decided to have a big traditional wedding, and Alice is going to be the party planner, as always. And she is so excited. And then Edward's like, hey, like, let's get out of the house. Let's go to the meadow. We haven't been there in a long time. So they go to the meadow. Edward says, tell me why you're doing this, Bella. Why did you decide now to give Alice free rein? Bella explains that she wants Charlie and Renee and Phil and to have, like, a final goodbye, and they want, like, she wants everybody, her friends, her family, she wants everybody to know that wherever she is, that she's with Edward and that she's happy, and that they will all have peace of mind. They won't be worrying about Bella and what's going on and why she hasn't been talking to anybody or anything like that. And Edward just goes, deals off. And Bella's like, what? And he's like, Bella says, what? You're backing out? And Edward's like, no, I'm not backing out. You can have whatever you want. No strings attached. And Bella's like, why? And Edward's like, he's like, you're trying to make everybody else happy. And I don't care about anybody else. Like, I only want you to be happy. That was my whole point with everything, was for you to be happy, for you to do the things that make you happy. And I see that I just totally messed that up. And you're doing things for other people, and that's the last thing I wanted. And Bella's trying to argue with him, and he's like, no. He's like, we're gonna do this your way, because I clearly am stupid. And then Edward starts to, like, climb Bella's bones, and she's like, no, I actually want to go through with this. I want to have this wedding. I want to let everybody have this final, like, memory and this final, like, goodbye with me. I don't want to do this now. And Edward's like, alright, fine. But, like, Bella says, I'm gonna do this right. And Edward's like, alright, fine, but like, how, what's right? And Bella says, well, first things first, I gotta go tell Charlie that I'm engaged. I'm gonna need that ring, Edward. And he's like, oh, perfect, it's right here in my pocket. Literally. He literally just pulled the ring out of his pocket, and he's like, here you go. And then there's an epilogue, and it's actually from Jacob's point of view. And Jacob is really hurt by this breakup with Bella, and he just wants to be alone, and it's kind of impossible for him to be alone. He tries to be alone, and then Leah follows him, and he's like, get out of here, like, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to talk to anybody, I just want to be alone. He hurts her to get her to leave. She leaves, and then he goes home because he's hungry, and Billy's like, oh, by the way, we got an invitation, a wedding invitation in the mail. There's a little note in there for you as well. And Jacob reads it, and it's a note from Edward, basically saying that, because Bella didn't want to invite Jacob to the wedding because she didn't want to hurt him. She thought it would be weird, and she thought it would like hurt his feelings if she did. And so Edward sent the invitation, and he put that little note that said, you know, Bella didn't want to invite you because she was afraid of hurting you, but I know that if I was on the other end, I would want to have the choice. So here we are, and this just like hurts Jacob all over again, and he leaves and he turns into a wolf, and Quill and Embry are also wolves, and they're like, hey, like, wait for us, and Jacob's like, no, like, leave me alone, and they keep running after him, and then Sam calls him off, and he's like, leave him alone, and then he tells Jacob, you know, come home when you can. The last line of this epilogue is, I pushed my legs faster, letting Jacob Black disappear behind me. And that's Eclipse. This was a long one, and there were so many details, the scenes in this book were so extensive. I feel like for how much, for how big this is, I feel like not a lot happened. I feel so bad for Jacob. I felt bad for Jacob since like the beginning because I really knew that Bella was leading him on. He's always had feelings for her. And she had feelings for him, but she didn't realize it, and so she was like reciprocating those feelings without even realizing it. She was just dragging him along. And then the kiss scene, that was just so intense. Just so that she can be like, I don't want you. I love you, but I don't want you. Ugh. I have to say that Edward was redeeming himself, though, because of the way he acted towards the end of this book. Just the way he was so understanding after Bella kissed Jacob, and how he was like, I get it. And him calling her love constantly really did help. Angel, don't fly so close to me. I'll pull you down eventually. You don't want to lose those wings. People like me break beautiful things.